Hello everyone, it's Josh again, and welcome to the second video of this mini-series. Today I'm at a park and there are plenty of geese, so you might hear them. You might also hear some people calling their dogs because they're chasing the geese. So if that's the case, bear with me. I'm wearing my microphone and hopefully that will help. In this second video, we're going to be looking at whether that research focus that we've been shaping up over the last few weeks has turned out into something researchable. So that's the key word for today's video. Is it researchable? Are we working with something that we can actually implement into a feasible research design? So I've got three key ideas here. The first one relates to data. The second one relates to timeline and time management. And the third one relates to obstacles, all kinds of obstacles that can happen. Doing research is about understanding the nature of a problem and trying to find answers to that problem by looking for evidence. That evidence can have many shapes and many forms. It can come in the form of personal narratives that people tell you. It can come in the form of photographs or images that you find in archives or libraries. It can come through numbers and patterns in those numbers that you see, which reflect maybe responses from a large group of people. They can come from insight that you obtain through different technologies that look at how the brain moves and works during certain activities, and many, many more. So at this stage, it's really important to understand that you will have to collect some kind of data. Even if you are able and allowed to do a systematic review or a critical literature review, your data will be the existing literature. And so data will always be there for you to reach out and access or collect or formulate in some sort of way. Now, my question for you is, can you actually access that data? Sometimes I've had students come up to me wanting to do certain things that were just not feasible in terms of their own abilities to collect certain types of data. The time it takes to develop the skills to collect certain types of data and to later analyze that kind of data, it's just not feasible. 2, 3, 4 months is just not enough. So if you're not very sure about how to do this, absolutely have a talk to your supervisor and figure out whether the data you want to collect can be collected and whether you are indeed able to analyze that kind of data at the stage where you are. The second aspect to consider, do you have enough time? That is one very, very important issue. I've had students who completely underestimate the task that is completing a BA or an MA thesis, and they just feel that it's something they can do in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. I've had students literally say, well, in 2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks, I plan on collecting the data and analyzing the data. So by the end of, say, February, we'll have that data collected and analyzed. And most often that is that's not feasible. We can't do that just because there are some hurdles, institutional hurdles that we'll talk about in a minute that may prevent us to do from doing so. And that's because sometimes we do need ethical approval, or we do need access to certain populations. These populations may or may not be vulnerable. These populations may or may not be easy to access, or they might just not want to collaborate in the project. So bear these things into account when the time comes for you to think about your timeline. Now, the timeline will very likely be already in place. In other words, you'll be able to ask your supervisor about when is the last hard deadline for me to submit this. I always say, think 2 weeks prior. 2 weeks prior is a phenomenal way of giving yourself some wiggle room between that date and the final hard date or deadline. You'll be able to skip a bit of a step or miss a beat here or there and still make it. Now, if you feel that you're not very good at time management, absolutely find other people to work with. As I mentioned in my previous video, I do lead a working group for my students so that they can work together. If that's not your case, find somebody who you can work with. It can be somebody from your own cohort, or there are some online groups available as well, which hopefully you'll be able to join. Now, throughout that timeline and within that time frame, I absolutely cannot emphasize this enough. Go to your supervisor as often as you possibly can. Some supervisors just want to see you at the end. If that's the case, absolutely fine. But let me tell you, it's much, much better to use, say, 30 to 45 minutes every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, just to touch base on things, just to make sure that whatever you're doing is being done the right way. You don't want to get to the end of this whole process and submit something that for some reason doesn't look at all like what you were meant to do, and now you've wasted a whole, say, 3 months and lots of headache. Something you can also maybe ask your supervisor for is a diagram or some sort of timeline with benchmarks. I do have my own, which I use with my students. It applies to our university, and it's helped most of my students complete their theses in a timely manner. It saved quite a bit of a headache, and it makes me feel comfortable to know that they know when I think they should be submitting everything in a kind of bulletproof sort of a way. It's been tested many years, and it does work. So if your supervisor has some kind of a timeline to share with you that fits your university's timeline, that would be great. So now that you know that you can obtain the data and you know how to work within the time frame you've got, think about other obstacles, and these obstacles may come in the form of ethics clearance processes, which in some cases may be quite difficult to get, or you might need help from your supervisor, from your advisor. You may have to contact certain kinds of participants, and again, these participant groups, say you want to work with a community school somewhere in the countryside or in a different city. You need to take into account that just because you don't live there or because you're not familiar to them, they might be a little less comfortable letting you in. So keep that in mind as well. Keep in mind that when you fill in some of these ethical concerns, sort of ethical clearance forms, sometimes it may take quite a while for you to obtain a permit to be able to work and actually start collecting data. So this is one thing that you should begin thinking about as soon as possible, and ideally you'll do this in conversation with your supervisor. Your supervisor will know a lot of things about this, and they'll be able to anticipate many of these problems. Other types of obstacles you may encounter include being ghosted by your own participants. Sometimes you find a few people who are willing to work with you, but those people might just not want to work with you when the time comes to actually collect the data. They may stop responding to your emails. They may stop. They may not show up when you book them for an interview. They may never return the survey that you email them. So there are many ways you can be ghosted by your participants, and actually you never really know the reason unless they tell you. But if you are ghosted by your participants, if suddenly what you think you were going to do or were going to be able to do can no longer be done, you need a plan B. That plan B does not need to be thought out from the beginning, but in my conversations with my students very early on, I always ask these questions. So what would happen if these participants do not respond? What would happen if you do not get 50 responses to your survey? Or what about if the answers to the questions do not align with what you're trying to find? So it's good to think about other options from the very beginning, and then if the time comes and if the situation appears that you need to change your initial plans, then you'll have thought about it, and your supervisor will already have thought about it alongside with you. Okay, something you can also consider is online data collection as a plan B in case trying to meet your participants falls through. Sometimes trying to find people to work with works, and you do find those people, but they may ghost you. If they do ghost you, you do need a plan B, and that plan B may fall radically on you. So in other words, you might have nobody to help you. Maybe your supervisor is either not willing to help you or not able to help you, in which case maybe online data collection can work. Now, for certain kinds of data collection, if they're conducted online, you might want to have to contact the ethics committee in your university, which allowed you to collect the data in the first place, because now the data collection methods have changed. So these are some of the kinds of obstacles I'm talking about. Of course, things like the COVID-19 pandemic that happened in the middle of many people working on their BA, MA, PhD theses. It happened in the middle of everybody's lives. So we all had to adapt. And I'm not hoping, or I'm not saying this will happen again, but whenever something happens, there are alternatives that we need to think about. It's always better to think with someone who's been there before and who's been doing the job before. So again, I loop you back to your own supervisor for feedback. Another way things can backfire a little bit, and a sort of an obstacle, can be to see that your data are not telling you the story that you wanted to hear. Now, this is something I hear a lot from my students. I'm not getting the kinds of results. I don't see the kinds of patterns that I was hoping for. Look, this is the nature of research. Research is not about your data confirming what you thought was going to happen. It's about unveiling new things. It's about finding new patterns, finding exciting stuff, and finding new stories. So if the stories you find are new, that's completely fine. Even if they're counterintuitive or they go against the grain of what you thought, it's completely okay. Your data tell the story. It's not an obstacle. Don't think about it in that way. So my advice now is think about these three steps, or these three elements that I just discussed. Think about your data, think about your timeline, and think about potential obstacles that may come up in the next few months as you work on your thesis. And once you're comfortable with these three, it's time for you to look at your research questions and move from your research questions into research design. And that will be the topic of our next video. I'll see you then.